If people have joined, welcome to the BIMA Parents Evening webinar. Now's the time to have that kind of 30 seconds awkward silence while we get ourselves sorted and get you some slides to go through. And then I'll set a bit of context and introduce our speakers for you. Those of you that are with us, thanks so much for joining us on this. Is it evening? It's kind of evening, late afternoon. Depends where you are, I suppose. It's the end of a long day for me. This is a webinar for essentially parents of some students that have engaged with BIMA over the last year. And I'm going to give a bit of context as to who BIMA is, who I am, and then I'll introduce some speakers for you. The webinar's in for an hour today, and we've got an agenda that I'll take you through in a moment. So that young looking chap, that's me, probably 15 years ago, looking healthy and sprightly before children, I think. My name's Matt, and I'm the managing director of BIMA. So BIMA stands for the British Interactive Media Association. We're essentially a trade body for UK digital and technology, and we represent our members and companies that work within UK digital, and we'll support them in lots and lots of different ways. When I go into the digital day schools, the analogy that I use is we're the FA for football. So we represent the industry and the teams within it. We represent UK digital and the companies that work within it. Now, a lot of what we do is, well, we've got three pillars in BIMA and how we support the industry. And the first pillar is the skills gap. And there is a gap there, right? And we do lots of different things. But essentially what the main sort of priority for us is to bring our members together to focus on a long-term sort of pipeline of talent coming into our industry, because there are lots of jobs available at the moment. We work in it. It's a brilliant culture. Like, I love working in digital, and we need good people coming into our industry. Now, a few years ago, we used to run this thing called Digital Day that I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. But when we go in there and we talk to secondary school students, the response is quite starking. A lot of students just think it's coding, and that gets quite a binary response around gender as well. Boys are sort of interested, girls are sort of not, and we've worked really hard to change that. So it's about inspiring students to think a bit more about what a career in digital would be like. That's the point of this sort of pillar we've got within BIMA. And we do it through various ways. But the reason you're on this call is because your child has probably taken part in something called Digital Day, which is a program that we run. It's one day in the year, and we go into nearly 200 secondary schools all over the country. And our goal is to inspire secondary school students just to think a little bit more about what a career in digital might be like. And we do it with a really hands-on workshop. So we send the likes of Becky and Amanda and Anita in, and they'll workshop for a day or a half day with your children and just the other students in the class. And it's about problem solving through innovation. It's not about coding. So you may be a parent of a child that's been in Digital Day, or you may also be the parent of a student that's been in something called Aspiration Digital that took place earlier this month. And Becky's going to tell you a little bit more about that. But the reason we're running this for you is that we know Digital Day works. We know Aspiration Digital Day works. And students leave those days with fire in their belly, and they're really excited, and they might have wireframed an app, and they might be excited about a job in user experiences. But what we know happens is sometimes when they get home, I'm not saying this is you, but sometimes that inspiration could be dampened a little bit, just with lack of awareness of the people at home around what a career in digital is like. So we've invited you to join this webinar just to make sure that that fire in their belly and that enthusiasm that they've got when they come home and they want to talk about a career in digital, that you can engage with them and talk about all the different options that are available. That's probably enough from me, because there's far more interesting people for you to hear from. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a webinar format, but we want to make it as interactive as possible. And we really do want you to ask questions as well. So if you can, fire away and tap away your questions in the Q&A functionality that you should see on your screen. At the end of the webinar, I'll go back and I'll get those questions and I'll direct them to the panel. So we will get round to it. Okay. But it's, yeah, webinar format. You're not on video. Sit back, put your feet up, drink your cup of tea, and listen to our speakers, who are, oh, this is the agenda, first of all. So Becky's going to talk a little bit more about Aspiration Digital, because that's sort of happened very recently, and some of your children would have taken part earlier in the month. Then I'm going to pass over to Frankie, who's going to talk about the industry at large, what is digital, and also a little bit more about the UK digital industry, because it's thriving. And then Frankie's going to pass over to Amanda. There we go. Who's going to talk about the jobs and the careers that are available in that industry. And then we've got Nida that's come to join us, that's going to tell us a little bit more about her first-hand experiences and the career that she's built for herself. So they're the lovely people that are going to talk to you. Becky, you're first up. I'm going to pass straight over to you if that's okay. I'm going to be everybody's Debbie McGee, and I'll click through the slides for you if you like. Just say next, Matt, and I'll fly through it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt, and a great welcome, and lovely to see everyone this evening. So I am Becky Sims. I'm CEO and founder of Aspiration Digital and Reflect Digital. If you move me on to the next slide, that just gives you the visuals on Aspiration Digital and just some of our social channels and the website if anyone wants to go and find out any more if your children didn't come to Aspiration Digital. So a little bit about me. So I run a digital agency called Reflect Digital. We have been going for 13 years, and Aspiration Digital was formed about 6 years ago, and it was off the back of my own personal experience in that when I was younger, I always say I was really lucky. My dad ran his own business, and I had him as this amazing inspiration that I was like, I want to run a business one day, but I didn't really know what that business would be. And I did well at school. I got good grades, but I didn't really enjoy school, and I didn't really see how school gave me what I needed to run a business, and I couldn't quite match it up. So when I left school, I didn't go on to university because I wasn't clear enough on what I wanted to do for the view of going to get into debt and spend 3 years doing something. I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I'll come back to it. So instead, I just got out there and job hopped until I fell into marketing, and then eventually fell into a digital agency. And it literally blew my mind. I fell in love. And this was, I'm going to show my age now, circa, I don't know, 2007, 2008. And Google was on the rise, and it literally was just amazing to find out how Google worked and how websites work. And I just fell in love, and that was it. I knew that was what I would end up running a business in. So I spent a couple of years doing all I could to gain experience in the roles I was in. And I'd started from a customer service point of view into kind of account management and how to look after clients, and then was able to, and I was lucky enough that I had my dad's support and a bit of financial support, only £3,000 to begin with, but to go and set up a business. And here we are, 13 years later, a team of 50 across 2 different agencies doing loads of different stuff, and it's all super exciting. And about 6 years ago, I said, we need to do something about this, though, because as much as the curriculum is moving on to a degree, it still, to me, doesn't fully match up. And a lot of young people, from all the conversations we've been having with young people, were saying, well, I want to be an influencer. And all they were really seeing is, or I want to be a designer, but they were seeing the front end jobs, the things that are obvious, the things that we can all see. And yet there's so many amazing, and you're going to hear about some of them tonight, different pathways and different roles that suit different skill sets that are hidden in the background, that are all absolutely critical to the front end that we all see and we all enjoy on our mobile phones today, on our laptops, on whether it's video on demand, on wherever. Digital is everywhere, and people aren't getting that experience to understand what those roles look like. So we wanted to change that. So we ran a conference. This year was our biggest one yet. We had over 400 students. It's supported by a huge amount of sponsors, which includes BIMA, which on the next slide, I've just given our sponsors a little shout out. We hosted it at Canterbury University, and I do have big dreams over the years to look to build this and be able to take it further around the country. But it literally is an amazing opportunity for people to hear from all different types of businesses across digital and what that looks like and how those people have started their careers. So on our website, which is just aspiration.digital, there's tons of content on this as well. So from today, if you do feel inspired about some of the different roles, you'll be able to go and have a little look. It links off to our YouTube, and any talk that we've ever had over the last 5 events that we've run, all of those are filmed that you can watch back, and your children can watch back and enjoy. So yeah, for me, I just wanted to say a little something tonight, because some of you might be here off the back of your children attending our event. And I'm also such a pro BIMA Digital Day person, and BIMA in general. We host 2 schools every year for BIMA Digital Day, and it is one of my favorite days of the year, getting to see the students getting hands-on with a challenge and actually seeing their amazing ideas that just naturally are coming out. And we want to then help plug those gaps of right now, what are the skills so that you could actually go and build that and make that happen. So thank you, Matt, for having me. Super excited to hear from the other speakers, and I'll be here for Q&A at the end as well. So thank you, everyone.
Hey everyone, it's great to meet you and great to hear more about your story, Becky. So I'm growth director at Climbing Trees, and a bit like Becky, we're a digital agency as well. So we're helping our clients get found on Google, advertise their service across different platforms, and we might do that for Greenpeace and help increase their donations, or share their educational content. Before this, I actually spent 10 years helping find top talent for this industry, and I found such a huge passion and love for helping school leavers and graduates sort of start their careers, that I was thrilled to be a part of the Digital Day Council as well. So moving into the next slide, please, Matt, into like what digital is. And I'm sure we are all familiar with with digital and how that might look today. So, it could be our social media, whether that's, scrolling on Facebook once we've put, children to bed, or perhaps on a cheeky lunch break, scrolling on TikTok, to the advertising we're seeing, walking around London with some of the digital screens, to TV and scrolling on websites looking for recipes. It really is, a part of our day-to-day life in so much more than that. One thing which I actually think is quite interesting to mention is that for the first time over the last couple of years, YouTube is actually being watched a lot more than, your normal TV. So that just really goes to show, how much that has changed. Now, on the next slide, and not to overwhelm anyone at all here, but mainly just to sort of show, I guess, the magnitude and the scale of, how this industry has changed over, the last 20 years. And, it almost did all start with a cheeky little web banner, to obviously now the rise of AI. But for me, I think, this really shows us how it's evolved and transformed, how we're communicating, how we're working, and to just even like navigating around the world. I'm sure we all remember the days of dial-up and not being able to use our phones at the same time as the internet. And to now, we're actually able to download so much information, whether we're on top of a mountain. It's insane. And one thing I think this does go to show is that this industry thrives on the change and really presents a lot of opportunities for like long-term and fulfilling careers. Next slide, please, Matt. So like, having sort of looked at that growth, we can really see that the benefits have dramatically changed a lot of the services we might use. So you can see here whether it's working remotely, like we've spoken about. Could we actually have imagined working how we are today 10 years ago? I think all of us are in a different room. Before, we might have had to be in a conference, get everyone travel into the same location, who knows. So again, it's just incredible to think about how it's changed. And if we move to the next slide, we can see that these services then fall into all of these different industries, which again, are affecting our daily lives. I think if you think about the NHS and how dramatically it's changed our healthcare by having this app. It's one of the most UK's downloaded apps, and that just has been a massive improvement for so many people. So sort of how we're gaming and to how we're shopping and eating, it's digital is affecting everything everything we do. So hopefully that sort of gave more of a bit of a snapshot into really what digital is and the sort of the impact it's having. And to break this down into the digital industry, let's actually see how this looks. So on this next slide, you're going to see that the tech sector is the #1 sector in Europe, and it's going to be because of its continued growth. And you've seen that today with some of the speed and the pace of how this industry has grown. But these stats here, for me, they really back it up. And what we're trying to show you today is that there is a huge number of opportunities available for school leavers and graduates, who might be looking to start their career in this space. Next slide, please, Matt. And I think, you know, if we look at how this might look for someone, you know, trying to start in the industry, it's a really fast-paced, constantly changing industry, as I'm sure I've mentioned already. So for anyone who loves keeping up to date with all of the latest technology and developments, you know, they're going to thrive because things can literally change overnight. You know, Google might update an algorithm and that's it. Our SEO team are straight on the case to make sure our clients' websites ranking isn't dropping down. So, you know, again, it can be a career which is really lucrative. Salaries are typically higher. It's important to perhaps note that this is more of a London salary as well, but across UK, you know, we will see higher salaries reflected in these tech jobs. Again, if it comes to working differently or, you know, looking to see the world or travel, you know, this industry offers that with the flexibility we sort of have. In my career, I've had the opportunity to meet people who have, you know, progressed really quickly to senior leadership, you know, within 5 years, and to others who have, you know, completely changed the skill sets, you know, they've spent years to develop, but then actually, you know, progress further in their career by switching it up. So I think, you know, what we have within digital now is a really diverse workforce and, you know, ultimately embraces this evolving landscape. Next slide, please, Matt. So sorry if you can hear my dogs barking downstairs. So we can see from this slide here that the digital and tech industry has been infiltrated across, sorry, digital and tech has infiltrated every industry sort of possible. And it's really exciting and it falls into, you know, these four main sectors really. And, you know, the tech companies play such an important part in what we all do because, you know, those might be the tools that we're using or the platforms we're using. And again, with the agencies, they might have more, you know, sort of specialist positions which, you know, focus on key areas such as like marketing and creative, but these roles will offer, you know, a lot more diversity with like perhaps the clients you're working on. Ultimately, the clients which fall into, you know, these private sector brands or these public sector brands. You know, I've known people who might work at an agency, work at a tech company, go and work, you know, for the BBC and then come back and work for a private sector brand as well. So I think what I love the most about this industry is, you know, how diverse the skill set is really and the crossovers that you can have, you know, within this space, and, you know, the different positions and occupations you can have sort of within that. Next slide, please. So, you know, Matt touched upon the digital skills gap and ultimately the projected growth for, you know, our industry is so huge that there's not enough people sort of who have the right skills needed to fill all these vacancies that are going to be opening over the next few years. So digital skills, when we're talking about that, can really be anything from, you know, being computer illiterate to knowing how to code or knowing how to use different softwares to marketing and or even digital project management tools. So as we've said, you know, it doesn't really matter what industry we might look to work in. You know, I think these digital skills are going to be needed for the sort of the UK economy to thrive. And I think the last slide will talk us more about this because, you know, ultimately over the last few years, you know, we've seen how much things have accelerated since the pandemic. And I think that's, you know, why it's so important for these for the digital skill gap to ultimately decrease. And I think these stats, you know, just help to show that ultimately, you know, if we're looking for children to, you know, pursue a career in tech, it's going to offer them, you know, a stable, a long-term career, which is hopefully, you know, going to offer them, you know, a decent quality of life. Again, it's a huge part of the economy, so it's really important that, you know, we're helping people to develop these skill sets. And again, for anyone, you know, it's not necessarily about just tech roles. It's about, you know, our HR and our legal and our finance and our sales as well. You know, I have to keep up with digital things and I don't necessarily implement anything techie, maybe apart from like an email campaign every now and then. But, you know, I still have to look at how that might work best for, you know, clients or prospects, etc. So it's really exciting. Hopefully that's sort of given you a bit more of an understanding to what digital is and, you know, the UK market.
Thank you, Frankie. So my name's Amanda Follett. I'm Global Head of Content Management, and what that means is I have a team of specialists all around the world who are responsible for managing websites for big global organizations and telling them often how to run that as well. And I work for EPAM, which we are now 60,000 worldwide. You probably haven't heard of us, but we are a top 25 agency in the world in terms of size, and we're seen as one of the top 25 tech companies in the world. And to give you an example, we're 30 years old this year, and our engineers built most of Google and YouTube. So we've developed a lot since that, as has the whole industry. Next slide, please, Matt. But firstly, looking at the culture of the industry. Now, when I started, it wasn't even called digital. I'm giving my age away. In the 90s, when the internet first launched, we saw it as an IT function. And in that area, being a woman, I was a diversity in that time. But over the many, many decades and how the industry has grown, we've really seen that diversity grow. We've needed it. So if you look at Amazon Alexa, when it was first built, it couldn't respond to a woman's voice, for example, because it had been built by men. And very often now we're seeing the diversity that's brought into all the apps that you use, to the things that we use in terms of the web, and even in terms of advertising. That diversity is needed to make sure that it can respond to everybody and be inclusive of everybody. And BIMA has quite a few initiatives to make sure that its agencies and its membership really are looking at that inclusivity through whether it be ethnicity, gender, even neurodiversity. And BIMA did a survey of the workforce a few years ago and found that 35% of the workforce in our industry were neurodiverse. And that means that they were probably on the autistic spectrum. So it's actually a third of our workforce. So we build around that culture and around that diversity. And also we have, we're trying hard to make sure that we're more sustainable from that as well. Next slide, please, Matt. But what's happened over the years is we have a variety of jobs, not just jobs now, but also you'll probably hear that the jobs that are available now, when children are going into high school, they might not exist when they leave high school. That's how quick things are changing. So in the past couple of years, you'd have heard about ChatGPT, and AI is really having a change in our industry and how we might use things and how we might use technology to work with our clients, to work with end users. And there are a variety of jobs, and those jobs are always changing. So, for example, strategically, in strategy, people might work with brands, they might work with data, they might work with science in terms of doing some scientific research on how people use things. So there's a lot of work that goes in strategically around that. And we'll talk about the careers behind this that can generate the sort of background for these roles. When I say science, it gives an indicator anyway. Creativity. So creativity is across the board, from problem solving right through to creating video content and using AI to generate content as well. So in the most modern of times, copywriting, so good writers can become excellent copywriters, even through history and people having history as a subject. They can then start creating copy for an element of a website that might be storytelling. So storytelling is a huge part of the internet that might be used, or even that subject might be used in gaming. So sometimes when there's historic games created, experts in history get brought in to make sure that it is of value and that it is true to the historic subject that it's trying to achieve. Development. So development is very much related to what sometimes is called coding. However, we've put front-end developer. This is often seen as a design. So we're seeing the words front-end designer used. So these are the people who are developing the user interfaces that you use across the board, from an app to a website to a piece of technology, to your televisions. That can be classed as a front end. Excuse me. So We have people, for example, in our organization who work with a Spanish version of Virgin Media and will upload and build out the television programs and the films that go on it. They have to set the endpoints and start points. So when you go onto Netflix and you can do skip intro, remember there's actually a job doing that. Somebody's actually performing that role of setting where that skip might be, hence why sometimes they might be incorrect. So these are roles that people play. And then we have the client services. So these are the people who wrap around in an agency, and they're responsible for making sure the client is getting what they need and that we're doing what the client needs and servicing in the right way and delivering that excellence and really looking at what is the future looking like. What does my client need? What do we need to develop to do that? Next slide, please, Matt. So there are so many ways in. And one of the hardest things to look at is what are the career paths? So traditionally, if you wanted to take a traditional path and, everybody watching this, somebody might have taken a traditional path and gone through education to achieve their goals and to go into a certain job. Doctors, for example, veterinary, certain scientists and law, they're, really key examples of that. And even down to roles that didn't need university but needed college. So plumbing, all of these had certain routes that you went in to be able to achieve your career path. This is where digital really, really differs from that, in that depending on what you do at school and depending on what university can send you in an area, but it also means you can work across that. So it really looks at what are the interests of those students. So, for example, my career was because I fell in love in building websites and looking at technology. And I built my career out of self-learning. I didn't learn anything at school. I didn't go to university. What it was, it became a special interest for me because I'm neurodiverse in learning that technology. And self-learning is a big part of our industry in terms of people moving into our industry and students coming out of university or even of school, or even moving from a job that they've taken while they're coming out of uni, such as a bar job. Very often people then start learning themselves and then come in our industry showing us what they can do. And that's probably a quite critical thing. I've had philosophy students who've moved into data processing, really successful. Then I've had those who've gone into law, they've gone into marketing. Those who've gone and done marine biology are some of the top data scientists in the UK now, because certain parts of what they were doing really were relevant to the roles in digital. And we're going to see this more and more. And whether it be going into finance, learning maths, whether it be looking at sales and having that ability to be able to talk to people and build that relationship, all of these are a variety of skills. And it really is about the skills rather than your background and the student's background that gets them through, and having an interest in it and using their strengths to build upon that. And next slide, please. So in terms of linking the curriculum, if we look at English, we've got a real snapshot. There's more jobs than this out there. But in terms of English, there's a multitude of jobs. We've just got a few. Copywriter and storytelling is a really good job for those English students. But we also see them come into content management. We also see them go into content strategy as well. And we see them just go into like PR roles or go into marketing. There's a variety of jobs that a student can have. The key thing is what they've done on side to pursue their career and do it themselves. So, for example, if they want to go into copywriting, have they created their own blogs? That's the sort of thing that we see in terms of that. And if we move on to the next one, please, Matt. Maths is a key one, from coding because it's logic, right through to data analysts and statistical analysis, and right through to becoming account managers and finance teams within agencies. We still need some of those traditional jobs, but they're in a digital world. So having that knowledge and having that background and that interest in mathematics can take you far. And mathematics was something that I like. I'm a bit of a pattern reader. So I developed a way of looking at data in operational sense for how people are running websites, not using them, which won me an award. And that's because I had a real love for statistical analysis and really looking at the patterns and the story that it came out of it. And you can develop your own career based on what you're interested in, and really can develop within this industry. And the next slide, please. ICT, computer science is a given. Now, what we find in that is a lot of the people who want to be programmers or designers go through this, or they want to go into game programming. Game programming is a huge industry. And where I live, I'm in Liverpool. We have some of the founders, and some of the founders of gaming in the UK were based here. So you see a lot of students who want to go into this, and we have big courses here to allow that, from design to computer, the sort of character design right through to the engines in terms of the Unity programming, and so on and so forth. And gaming is such a huge industry, including esports. And very often the students that come through this route want to go into one of those areas because they're passionate about it. So whether it be app development, website development, game development, right through to analytical, and even through to the design. As I say, normally that's a given in terms of the career pursuit. And the next slide, please. So what do people enjoy? So our industry is full of creativity and innovation, and you don't have to be a creative. And what I mean by that is, I cannot design for toffee. I've never been a graphic designer. I can draw some squares. I'm very functional. However, I'm a very creative problem solver. So creativity and innovation runs across everything. And it doesn't mean that you have to be able to be the best artist in the world. You can come up with new ideas. And the next one, please. So it's dynamic and fast paced. It really is. As I say, only last year, AI really took the surge. It's been hovering around for ages, but actually it really started making an impact last year. And all of us now have got to get up to speed. So you have to be on your toes. You have to look at what's going to have the impact. Otherwise, somebody else is going to take that in front of you, and be ahead of you. So it makes it exciting and challenging. And our industries really promote this, of staying ahead of the trend and staying ahead of what might be coming. And actually, the other thing is about encouraging others to do the same, and knowledge sharing, whether it be in your agency or between agencies through organizations like BIMA. And next, please. As I mentioned, collaboration and networking. Our industry, actually, especially the creative part of our industry, was built by people networking. It was actually men meeting in pubs and collaborating was how the creative industry took a surge in the UK in terms of creative and marketing. And the tech industry followed, and that hasn't changed. Even during the pandemic, people were getting online to collaborate, and we're seeing that now. And within organizations, a lot of them have moved remotely because we've worked in this way for so long. So it's been very successful. And we do that knowledge share. There's lots of groups around the UK, whether it be women in tech, whether it be a certain role such as tester gatherings, UX people, all these groups get together to expand their knowledge and expand their network. And that means people also have opportunities in their career for that growth. And next, please. Constant learning and development, once again, keeping on your toes, but actually organizations within our industry recognize this and really support this. So you have often learn budgets, and putting people on courses to learn things. I've grown so much since I've been in the industry. And I was from starting out in building websites to then launching the first ever comparison engine in the world, to now working with huge clients, telling them how to run their web estates. I've had to grow and had to learn things as I moved through my career. And that's no different to anybody. You're never static, and you're always learning, and you're always developing your skills to be suitable to continue your roles. And the next one, please. So we talked about salaries, and I know there was a question actually in there. of what sort of salary is the starting. Well, we have got one here. So an entry-level social media executive is 30K. And actually, if we look down south for content management, that's pretty much the same. So anything around administering content, systems, data admin, that sort of thing, that's normally in London, that's pretty much the same. That's with London weighting added and averaged out. And then you're looking at digital managers. And actually, I was looking at digital managers and Indeed. So you can have a look at these roles in Indeed in your area. So we're looking at junior marketing managers in Bristol, for example, in the Southwest. They're looking at around 35K, and that's a pretty junior role. And all they want is your basic understanding of marketing and some social media and online experience, which people can gather in their own time. And then we're looking at digital marketing managers, 45K upwards. And then you're looking at the head ofs. So we're talking these people who've got many years experience who are looking at 75K. I think that's underestimating. I've seen a lot of, depending on big global companies, if you're working for a global organization, you're looking at 100K upwards for the head of or the VP of digital marketing. And obviously students aren't going to walk into those jobs tomorrow, but it gives an idea currently of what they'll hit, and obviously those increase. CTOs, chief technology officers, CIOs, I've seen, chief information officers, upwards of 100K easy. And full stack developers are probably one of the most sought out commodities that we see across the UK. And somebody with around 5 years experience can command a salary of 70K upwards if they've got the right skills. And actually an entry level role for that is around 25K minimum to start for a developer. That's up north even, but you're looking at within 3 years, they're moving up to 35, 40, 45K, 50K plus very, very quickly. Once you've got the experience in these roles of over 1 year, you start seeing that out there. And we start seeing that in the jobs that are advertised, the experience that's needed. Next slide, please. So where to start? So there are lots of organizations that are there to help people progress. We've just got a snapshot. The best thing to do is search for BIMA Digital Day, and you'll see something called the Resources Hub. And that has a lot of learning that can be done for students, but actually for yourselves as parents, there's a lot of information out there, what's available. There's something called IDEA, for example, the Inspiring Digital Entrepreneurship Award, which is, a lot of us will remember, D.of.E., Duke of Edinburgh, when we were at school. There's a similar thing for digital where you can get your badges, and that's for open to any age. Google Digital Garage talks about digital marketing, and that has a basic course in digital marketing that anybody can start with. So there is so much out there for people to learn from. And as I say, and if you're not well versed with it, there's information on the Digital Day Resources Hub. And the next slide, please. And you can get free qualifications. Say Google Digital Garage does give certificates for learning. And these are really useful for students and even for yourselves. If you're working in an industry where you want to learn more because you've not been open to, you're not aware of it, and because not every industry is, then, these resources can be used for you as well. And actually we see some teaching assistants and teachers who are also taking these courses because they want to keep up with the students, because students are learning faster than we are, for sure. So it's about keeping up with the kids, so to speak, and there is a lot out there. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Nida.
Cheers, thanks Amanda. So hi everyone, I'm Nida East. I've worked in the industry now for 12 years across a range of different sectors, projects and countries. So, actually, Matt, thank you. Thanks so much. Sorry, I just managed to lose everybody. There we go. Right. So I'm currently a senior managing consultant at IBM, and I will come on to what that actually means in a second, because I realized that when I was at school, I didn't know what that was, and my parents definitely didn't know what that was. Debatable as to whether they understand what it is now. But basically, by skill set, I am a project manager. So I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about my experience in this industry, and I'm going to take it way back to when I was 18. So I went to Northumbria University, that's up in Newcastle, to study business and information systems. And while I was there, we had this module called technology consulting. Now, technology consulting is where you use the latest technology and innovation to go and solve real world problems. And I loved it. So after that, when I was at uni, I went and applied for IBM's graduate scheme and I was accepted. So I moved down from up north all the way down to London, and I spent the first couple of years just trying out different roles. And I learned the basics of project management, but I also tried out some technical roles, right? Like coding and testing. And I decided that the project management route was more for me because I love being organized. I'm a huge people person and I love leading teams, right? So it felt like the right fit. So one of the first projects I led was down in Swansea with the DVLA. And I used to travel down there every week, and I got to lead the implementation of the organ donors project. So when people, this is back in 2013, right? So when people renewed their license, or if you just got your license, or if you were changing your address or something like that, you needed to update your driver's license, you would then get the option to become, well, to opt in to become an organ donor. And this functionality didn't previously exist. So you now, when you go onto the DVLA website, and you can now opt in to be an organ donor. So that was really, really cool to actually deliver some real meaningful change that other people around me got to use and see as well. And another project I worked on later on was with Nationwide Building Society. So I led a team of technical architects in designing Nationwide's very first in-branch video banking solution. So Nationwide were the first building society to use this technology, making it so much easier for customers to get financial advice when they needed it. And I grew up in Leeds before I went to uni. And it was so cool when I'd go back to Leeds on the weekend and I could show my mum on the high street, but look how they've redesigned Nationwide's, offices and, their shops basically. To actually have all the new kit in it. So you'd walk past the branch and I'd be like, hey, look, they've redesigned it to fit all the new tech in it. And that again was another real life example. And while I was at Nationwide, I also looked after some of the teams that then actually led the design for the Nationwide banking app. And whilst I was working with Nationwide, I led teams out in India. So I got to spend a lot of time traveling. So I got to go to the Taj Mahal, which was really cool. And another highlight was I got the opportunity to meet our CEO of IBM at the time, Ginny Rometty, out in the Bahamas. So that was a really special moment and a career highlight. I mentioned earlier that I have 2 kids, or I hope I did. I seem to have forgotten if I did or not. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. That also messes with my memory. And after my first maternity leave, I came back to IBM a year later, and I took on the role as chief of staff. And that was a really high pressure internal role where I got to learn how a large tech company really operates. So that was an awesome experience. And then I had my second baby, and I've just returned about 6 months ago, and I'm currently a program director working with the Home Office for IBM, where we're using technology to enhance the public sector experience for all citizens across the country, right? And I just wanted to demonstrate just how varied a role and a career you can have in this industry. Everyone is welcome. It really is an inclusive place to be, right? I mean, I have apprentices in my team who didn't go to university, working alongside graduates with a range of degrees, like Amanda was commenting on earlier. They've got degrees in art, history. It doesn't necessarily have to be a technical degree, right? There is so much opportunity out there in this industry. All you need is a willingness to learn and some passion. Like, I honestly believe the world of tech, the world of digital, this industry, it's your oyster. So yeah, that's my 5 minutes. Let me know if you have any questions. Always happy to chat.
Thanks so much, everyone. Becky, Frankie, Amanda, Nida, really, really interesting. And I appreciate you giving up your time. I'll do my hosty bit, shall I? And I'll go into the Q&A in the chat and call out some of the questions. There's still time, everybody else, to post some questions in the Q&A, and I'll do my very best to get to them. So, Amanda, I know there were a couple that you said that you were happy to take, so I won't just go in order. You okay to dive in? I think there was one
So,
about, there's a question about a 13-year-old that was...
yeah. So the question was, what advice would you give to a 13-year-old who's interested in a career in IT? The key thing is look into it themselves and build up a portfolio, and because that will beat any other student who comes out of education. And what I mean by that is if they've got a passion for it, then they need to start learning about it in their spare time. Education won't give them everything that's necessary to come into our industry. We have organizations who try and close the gap, but self-learning is absolutely critical. We've put some of the links in there. So going to Google Digital Garage, looking at IDEA, and also if there's a specialist field, looking what's out there. So for example, we have coding clubs and coder dojos and all sorts of things like that if they want to be a programmer. So it's about looking what's available for them to do outside of education, because they are not, it's very rare you'll get everything in education because it has to be generalized and the curriculum doesn't allow for it. So that's the biggest thing, is learn in your own time, do things in your own time so you can build things. There's a lot of free tools. You don't even have to spend money on it, and actually show what you've learned and what you can do. That will get you through the door for anything. And actually that answers, I think, some of the question about, are there options for young people who don't obtain grade 4s? I failed my A, well, I didn't even finish my A levels, and I managed to get into this industry. And I've particularly hired people who have got experience. Again, learn in your own time, go and do things and show what you can do, because honestly, bedroom coders are sometimes the best ones because they've self-learned, rather than somebody coming straight out of university with no experience at all. They've just learned the academic side. If they're put up against somebody who can show what they've done, then do that. And if it's websites, for example, ask a local organization, can I build a website for you? I got very much into it by building websites for small travel companies, and that's how I got through the door. So it's about doing things in your own time, because that's what's going to show you off. And actually, if you take that and you apply for a role, that will get you everywhere, rather than actually, I learned this in school or I learned this in university. So that was those couple. Let me just, I think there was one more as well, which was about in terms of the jobs that are out there, have we got more grads than jobs and so on and so forth? The answer is there are jobs that are out there. So I've done analysis with our local government and looking at a national level, and we're looking at entry-level jobs. This is people with no experience, hence try and get experience yourself and do it yourself. They're about 10% of all the jobs that are out there. So entry-level jobs are few and far between in terms of graduates coming out and going into these roles, for sure. However, once you gain experience, even through your own mechanisms, then actually you can get past that entry level and start looking at the jobs that are out there. And we're looking at the majority of jobs need like 1 year's experience, maybe 1 to 3 years that we're seeing in our industry. And those jobs are growing. We have a huge gap that we can't fill those roles, but what we need is people to go out and learn things themselves and bring that knowledge into organizations, because we don't have the capacity to be able to give them everything from day dot, because there's so much to learn. And I've put around apprenticeships, I've put a link for somebody in the Q&A.
Yeah, I saw that too, and we'll distribute that link to everybody. There's also a question in there, will we get a copy of the slides? And the answer is yes, we can send a copy of that. And this whole thing's been recorded, so we'll distribute that as well. We've got another question here. Can you recommend a company that offers work experience for a college student currently studying creative digital media that is neurodiverse, preferably online? So that's there's probably something BIMA can do there just by using its network. And the open chat probably isn't the time to go into what area of neurodiversity that person might classify themselves as, but feel free to use the email that you've got this diary invite for, and you can ask any member of my team, and then we can put links out to the BIMA community. We have lots of Slack channels, and they'll all run work experience programs. But if you're looking for something quite specific, it's a broadcast sort of community that we've got, and we'd be more than happy to try and help with that. And on the subject of neurodiversity, I mean, the culture of our industry is really good. So we held an event in December where we brought a lot of people together in London about how to build neurodivergent teams and the benefits of that. So it's a pretty progressive industry, I think you'll find, when it comes to those sorts of areas. What else have we got? Noting the evolution of the digital industry over the past 10, 15 years, how can we support upcoming talent to support the direction that the industry is heading? Are there particular new roles, technologies, specialisms that you'd advise looking into? Anybody else got a view on that?
AI.
Yeah. Amanda, you beat me to it. I was going to say AI is definitely something to look at, and we're seeing new roles like prompt engineers appearing every day at the moment. But I'd say also the thing, and this came up a lot actually at Aspiration Digital recently as a question, is trying to focus on the skills, because our industry is a very creative industry, and by creative, I think we've already covered that tonight, but that doesn't mean being able to draw a beautiful picture, because I'd be out immediately if that was the case. But it's that creative thinking and really focusing, and I think it is one of the ways that I'd love to see the curriculum moving, is students being able to observe the skills that they're using to get to the answer, whether that's for the exam or the coursework or whatever it is they're doing. But yeah, I think AI is definitely a big focus area, one that I would look at, and how that spans many different areas.
I had a quote this week. You're probably not going to lose your job to AI, but you might lose it to somebody that understands it and can use it.
Quote.
Yeah. We've answered the one about the role starting at 32K, and we'll distribute the slides as well because it gives an indication of what they might be. Here's a good. Well, we'll finish off on that one, the best and worst parts of the job. So you'll get a couple of minutes to think about your answer to that one. That'll be our closing statement. Before I move on to that, do you work long hours in your jobs? I don't know.
You can.
Yeah.
I certainly have a good work-life balance, so I used to. I think it all depends on what you're doing at the time. How is everyone else?
Yeah, I'd add to that. You can work long hours, especially agency side. I think that sometimes does end up happening because multiple clients to please, etc., and never enough hours in the day. But I think the thing that's important is sometimes it doesn't feel like work if you really love it. And I think it's the type of people that really can excel in the digital industries are often so passionate. I was talking to a colleague about this earlier today. We were having a laugh in the office about something the other day, and one of our developers came in the next day and he was like, I just built a prototype for that silly thing we were talking about. And no one asked him to do that. It wasn't actually a thing that we really need, but he just loves it and wanted to go and play with it. And it was his passion. So I think sometimes, it's straddling that long hours versus actually I'm just having fun and furthering my own love of what I do. And actually I get paid to do it as well, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I do, but it's total flexibility. And I think most people have a lot of flexibility, don't they, in our industry, because they're pretty digital savvy and they can work from different locations. So, it's commonplace just to nip off at 3 to half 3, pick the children up on the school and come back, and you work on your own terms in most companies that I come across. So the last one from Stuart Johnson, if anyone can answer this for me, what equipment is needed at home for LLM and CAD?
I think that's very specific. So you're talking about the LLM for AI. Actually, there are a lot of tools out there that you can use that you don't need to then have specialist equipment. There's a lot online already. And in terms of CAD, that's very specific to certain industries again. There are, once again, free tools that you can look at. So it's about the tools rather than equipment. So a laptop, for example, and a tablet will access most of the websites that you can do these things on. And it's about starting where you can and then finding an interest rather than investing in, oh, I need a high-powered computer to be able to crunch all this data and all these points that I'm putting in for AI. You don't need to do that. There's tools out there that can actually where you can start learning rather than actually buying in equipment to do that.
Okay. Right, I hope you've got your answers ready. I did give you a chance to tee them up, but it's a nice one to finish on. Thanks everyone for joining, but I'm going to ask you for a concise, brief answer. What's the best and the worst parts of your job? Who's going to go first? If not, I'll pick on you. Becky, come on, and we'll go in order. Best and worst parts of your job, please.
So best is people and results, like hand in hand. I get to work with so many amazing people in my team, but in clients' businesses, but also we're always focused, we're a performance business. So we're always focused on results. So that could be the results of seeing people grow, but all the results we deliver for clients. The worst part, or I love everything about what I do. I don't like admin, and I do sometimes have more admin than I need.
Nida, can I go to you next?
Yeah, actually really similar to Becky. I love the people I get to work with. I also love getting to use the latest innovations as well, like generative AI, for example, and how can we use that to improve the world around us, which is really cool. In terms of the worst part of my job, again, really tough because I'm lucky to love what I do. It's a bit of a pro, a bit of a con, but the industry is forever changing, right? So nothing is stable. I think back in the day, people would kind of go to work and that would be their thing. They would have like one area of expertise and that's it. Whereas now you have to adapt constantly, which, is super, super exciting. But also, I guess, you could get a bit tired of constantly having to navigate the change, but I love it.
Amanda, you're next.
The best part for sure is working with huge clients and getting to travel. So only just before Christmas, I was in Dubai working with a client out there. I've been to India, I've seen the Taj Mahal, the Burj Khalifa. I've seen all around the world due to working with big global clients. And it's not just about the travel, it's understanding how they're working and getting excited. What I really love is when I put some changes in and looking at the way that they operate, and putting those changes in place and seeing it work and the client being really excited. And that you've done that, you've come up with that for them. And actually, as a result, their teams are really happy, they're growing and things like that. So achievement is great. The worst part of my job is having to go back to back on calls and then having to think in between. So having to plan my day so I've got think time, and that admin of trying to organize your calendar is probably the worst part because everybody wants to talk to you and then you've got to work and you've got to sit down and think for a client and have some think time. So having to say no to people to talk to them is probably the worst part.
Frankie.
Hey, the best part, do you know what? I think it's got to be the team, to be completely honest. It's like the people we're working with, you spend more time with those people than you do with your other halves at home. So it's definitely got to be that. And the worst part would just be just the lack of time. There's just never enough time in the day. And I think is that a really lame answer? But I think that is it. That is my answer. So that's it.
This is a good answer. The best part, I think the culture is just great. Like at BIMA, for everything we do around AI and the metaverse and Web3, we do something on sustainability and well-being of the people in digital. The worst bit, I think, I don't know if everyone else gets this, people will come up to me with their phone, with their laptop, and say it's not working. I'm like, I work in digital. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I could fix a laptop. I run a trade body. Sometimes I think people, because you work in digital, think you can just fix anything digital. And I'm like, no, I can't fix your phone. Sorry, you need to go to Apple to do that. That's probably the worst bit, but that's as bad as it gets. Thank you so much for giving up your time and being such brilliant panelists. We had some lovely comments in the chat. We should definitely do more of these. This is the first one. And thank you to everyone that's joined. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy your dinner. Hope the wind isn't too bad where you are. We managed to keep Wi-Fi for everyone, and more of these coming soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so
Cheers,
much.
bye.
Thanks all. Bye.